Hi and welcome to ECCB Connects, a production of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank to share with you who we are, what we do, and how we serve you. On this week's program, Governor Antoine responds to questions from the media in Anguilla. Stay with us, we'll be right back after this message.
When the ECCB took the bold step to introduce Dcash, the people of the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union were at the heart of this decision.
It's about creating opportunities.
It's about connecting family.
It's about linking friends.
It's about changing the way we do business.
It's about transforming lives.
A journey to a place where none have gone before will not be without its challenges.
But challenges will not deter us from our goal. It's about me.
It's about you.
It's about all of us.
So join us and let's make history together.
Thanks for staying connected. Governor of the ECCB, Timothy N.J. Antoine, led a delegation to Anguilla from 4th to 6th May as he commenced his 2022 country outreach mission to ECCB member countries. During the mission, Governor Antoine and his team met with government officials, bankers, and social groups. Their discussions focused on the performance, developments, and prospects for Anguilla. Governor Antoine wrapped up his mission to Anguilla with a presentation to the local media on navigating the post-pandemic environment. He also fielded questions on a range of issues from media practitioners. We now share with you excerpts from that segment of the media conference.
What framework do we have in the OECS? Because we keep talking every time about the food bill in CARICOM and in the OECS. But the agriculture framework for us to feed ourselves nutritiously, I'm not seeing it. And that is a big question we need to answer.
Right. So it's a burning question. It's a vexing issue because, as you said, we've talked about this for a long time. And what tends to happen, Mr. Pickering, is that when food prices are high, the talk peaks. And as soon as we get an ease, the thing fades. We saw that in 2008 with the food prices. You know, when energy prices were almost $150 a barrel. And then as things eased, the thing waned. What is encouraging on this occasion is Guyana is now back in the conversation with some resources to support that conversation. That fast ferry that Barbados and Guyana recently discussed, which is intended to get to the Eastern Caribbean, is an important development there. Because one of the things that stalled us a few years ago, we actually did a study on the fast ferry. The small one was costing about $4 million US, the big one I think about 16 million US. It would be able to do cargo and it would also be able to do cars. I think the big one would do 40, 30 cars, the small one would do I think 10 cars if I recall. But then there was this issue of making that investment and then the movement between countries. With Guyana coming to the table and basically indicated that it is prepared to support a fast ferry, that I think is important to move products around. Because what I hear from business people who produce agro products, for example, and even food, I can't get it around the place efficiently. You know, I have to wait on something go in Miami and go back up to come down, or a vessel that may be going between one or two islands but not going right up the chain. We need something that takes us right through the archipelago. So that to me is an important development this time around. That fast ferry service, that's a key missing piece, shipping, distribution. Because as I said, you have instances where you have some countries with food surplus and you have countries with food deficit. And you need to make the connections and make sure you move the food around in an effective way without having to rely on Miami. When I say Miami, ships coming out of Miami, Tropical or whoever is shipping out of Miami. So I'm hopeful on this occasion. And then there are some bigger troubling issues that we have to talk about in respect of public policy. How do we address the matter of ultra-processed foods, which are killing us? Almost 8 in 10 deaths in the Caribbean come from NCDs, non-communicable diseases, obesity, hypertension, diabetes, and so on. Challenge with that is that the ultra-processed foods are cheaper than local foods. And so part of the discussion is, how do we give farmers enough support so that you grow the demand and therefore you can get more business and you can get your margins, you get the price down. Right now it's a niche market where those of us who could afford to pay for local food pay, and those who can go foreign, they buy import. That's hurting us health-wise. Those are some of the discussion that the health ministers, for example, were discussing recently. And the finance ministers have asked that we bring the food ministers, agriculture, the health ministers, the finance people together and come up with a joined-up approach to dealing with this issue once and for all. I don't want to overpromise because there are some complicated issues to resolve, but I think that shipping thing is an important start because we have food right now which are trapped and which go to waste simply because we can't ship them around.
How would the ECCB assist with renewable energy where we have private enterprises who would like to engage themselves in renewable energy?
Good question. So we start with the reality. Where are we? Because that is important for us to develop a sense of urgency for action. In Anguilla, only 4%, I'm told, of your energy mix comes from renewable. 4%. It means that 96% of your energy comes from fossil fuels, which means we have to import it and we have to use foreign exchange. That's an expensive route. So, at ECCB, we've developed on our own campus, and I start with that because we're not asking you to do what we have not done ourselves. Nearly 70% of all energy on our campus comes from solar PV. By the end of this year, it will be 100%. We're now saying to our governments, we need to see you replicate that sort of ambition in countries. And one of the things that we want to do, to answer your question, is that we're actually working with the World Bank and other partners to set up what we call a renewable energy infrastructure investment facility to help our governments raise money to invest in renewables. So I'm very pleased, for example, that the government of Anguilla has taken a decision that they want Anglec to go heavy with renewables. I think that's a good move. Now, as we look to do that, funding is one thing that is required, but it is also important to have an appropriate policy and regulatory framework. If you, Mr. Richardson, are investing in renewable energy, you need to know, and you may be generating excess, you need to know what price Anglec will give you if you sell your excess. You need to have clarity on that before you make that investment. So one of the things we are also doing through that facility is to help with technical assistance to our governments to ensure that they have the appropriate policy, legal, and regulatory framework. Because without that, financing will not be enough. And of course, if you have that and you don't finance it, it still doesn't happen. You need both. And that's what ECCB is doing. So we've been talking to the World Bank and others. We were in Washington recently following up on that issue, among other things. And we are hopeful that we'll be able to attract some climate money, some of our own money domestically, because we have liquidity in the banking system, some of our own savings, which are just there, earning 2%. You could actually invest in renewables and earn more through a proper structured fund or facility. That is what we're working on now.
In the presentation, it was just mentioned that lending to households is recovering, however, credit to business is lagging. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? I know you just mentioned you're encouraging government to speed up legislation to help businesses. Do you think that is the reason why credit to business is lagging?
No, I don't think that's so in this particular case, it's not a good thing when credit to businesses is lagging. That's not generally a good thing. Unless the economy is overheating and things are really going too fast. In economics, we call that overheating, where you begin to see inflation because essentially too much money chasing too few goods. In this particular instance, as Kevin alluded, because of the pandemic, brutal on businesses. People were just trying to survive. So you're either using up your savings, your buffers, or you needed to use a moratorium, at which case you're probably more indebted now than at the start of the pandemic, and you're trying to find a path to recovery. And of course, in an uncertain environment, that never helps business. So the truth is, businesses are now finding their feet. And of course, it doesn't help with what is happening in Ukraine. But we believe as the economy picks up, as there's more relaxation, as we feel more comfortable about COVID and where it's at, you're going to see more initiative and people taking activities. And then you have to see what is going on in the country as well. So the investment in the airport facility, for example, other things that are planned. Anguilla is able to move on renewable energy. Those things will actually help businesses. I always remind people that you cannot transform this region without addressing energy. The cost of energy is a major drag on business because businesses need energy. So if you tackle renewable energy, you're going to really help all businesses, large and small. Having said that, we do believe that there are additional things that could and should be done to support businesses, like the credit bureau, like the partial credit guarantee, which is to help them access credit. And so we believe that the government should also support those activities because they will give the businesses a better, like Dcash, which is an initiative that we're doing to allow small businesses. When we launched Dcash last year, one of the things we heard from small businesses is that give us an e-commerce option. So we agreed, and we've developed it, and we'll be rolling that out soon. And Anguilla could be one of the very first because you're coming on next to actually use it. That is something small businesses are asking for. And so we believe as those enablers are put in place, and as the environment gets a little more certain, you should see credit to the businesses start to come around and start to improve, start to increase. But the context is we came out of a very brutal season called the COVID-19 pandemic, and businesses are just trying to recover. Some, of course, did not, as you know, did not survive. But also new businesses were born, as in everything. And it is now to see these businesses really take off.
Do you have a time span when the credit bureau is expected to be implemented in Anguilla?
The credit bureau is supposed to be launched by November of this year. When it is launched in Anguilla very much depends on when Anguilla passes the legislation. And so we did stress in Executive Council yesterday the need for urgent enactment of the credit reporting bill. There are only 2 countries in our currency union that have not yet passed this legislation, Anguilla and St. Lucia. So we will start with the 6 countries that have already passed, but obviously we want it in all 8 countries. And our hope is that Anguilla will pass soon. We feel confident it will, Anguilla will, but obviously the sooner the better. And in the case of Anguilla, it is also to help us with NPLs. So we have a double incentive, if you will, a motivation to actually get the credit bureau enacted in Anguilla.
Mr. Antoine, you spoke about the fact that the credit bureau should be implemented by October, November.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would it just benefit businesses, or how would it benefit the small man?
Good question. So just to be clear, we will be launching a public campaign, education campaign on the credit bureau in the next few months in the lead up to the launch. But as I always say with the credit bureau, it's about supporting responsible lending and borrowing. That means it works for the banks, financial institutions. It also works for borrowers, be they businesses, individuals, households. There are many people in this region, in this country, and in this region, many small businesses who complain about lack of access to credit. They go to a financial institution and they're not getting credit because maybe the person doesn't know them. They don't have a name, and maybe they don't have a lot of track record and collateral. If you get a credit score, it is an independent basis. So it's not just who knows who. Who knows who got us in some trouble some years ago. I think everybody knows where I'm going with that, in respect of some of the difficulties we see with non-performing loans. You need an objective basis, empirical basis to assess, as Kevin said, and price risk. That is what the credit bureau does. In modern economies, you go to the US, you go to Canada, UK, and of course, even in our region, you go to Barbados, Trinidad, but Barbados is recent, Trinidad, Jamaica, a credit bureau exists. And so we believe that it will help both. And here's the thing for the small person. Some of the small people actually pay their bills and have very good credit. But the banks don't have that history on them. A lot of them do cash transactions, they take their time, they save, and then they buy. They're very frugal, they manage their business well. They get no benefit for that. Because you don't have a credit bureau, their history is not known. And if they actually get a loan, they are probably going to be paying a higher interest rate than they really should be paying, because that information is not available. And guess what? The person who's probably not servicing their loan so well, but knows the right persons and people, may in fact be getting money and a lower interest rate. You see the challenge. The credit bureau is intended to create a leveler, exactly, and give people a fair chance at credit. And therefore, we highly recommend it because we believe it will help both borrowers and lenders. And that is why we are so keen to see it come to Anguilla and the Currency Union.
May I ask a question in terms of the non-performing loans?
Yes.
The asset management company,
yes,
you said, is there to regulate or to the bank will buy out the loans that are non-performing. When the bank buys the loans that are non-performing, what would the results be?
Right. So the Asset Management Corporation or any other entity that is involved in buying bad loans, non-performing loans, what happens? So they go to a bank, the bank say, I have a portfolio of bad loans that I want to sell. They do the valuation, they do the negotiation, and they sell. Having sold it, let's say it's sold from the bank to the Asset Management Corporation. The bank then gets cash back. That cash, they can now do new loans. In the absence of that money, the bank is often constrained in how much credit it can give because non-performing loans, bad loans, are a drag on credit for the banks because they're carrying this, they're not earning on it, but they're carrying it on the books, and by the way, they have to provision, so it's actually hurting their bottom line and all of that. It is hurting shareholders as well because profit, it goes to the bottom line. When you sell to the Asset Management Corporation or to any entity that is purchasing, it frees up that money for the bank to do new lending. The asset managed company that buys the bad loans can now work out with the owners if they wish, arrangements, or they can sell, but they have more time to do that. A bank can only restructure a couple times. There are limits for prudential and regulatory reasons why a bank can't just restructure a loan. So you can then work with a borrower and maybe eventually get them into a place where they can continue to service, albeit on different terms. But the Asset Management Corporation actually will work that out, as they try to then, of course, recover. But there's more time to do that. So it does two things. It frees up the bank to lend more money to the economy, and it allows the Asset Management Corporation to work with persons to see if they can. Some will, some may not. In some cases, if they can't, obviously they will sell. They will put it on the market. They will see what they get in terms of pricing. But they are more able, as we would say, they have more patient capital. They can be more patient than the banks can be because for prudential reasons, the banks only have limits in terms of how often they can restructure a loan. And very often in this debate about non-performing loans, what I find is missing, which is really unfortunate, is the responsibility, the fiduciary responsibility that banks have to depositors, you and me. The first thing a bank has to do when they take your money is to protect it so when you come for it, you could get it with some interest. If people are not servicing loans, and there may be reasons, there may have been a hurricane, there may have been businesses, some loans go bad, that's part of business. But if that continues, you're not going to get your deposit back. Look at what happened here. NPLs rose to 50%. It meant that 1 in every 2 loans in the banking system in Anguilla were bad, non-performing. That's why we ended up with the resolution of these 2 banks. We're now down to the 20s. We've cut that NPL ratio by half, but as Kevin said, it is still too high. So I just want people to understand the connection. Nobody just wants to sell a property, but there is an obligation for the depositors. If you don't take action to recover, one day you will not get your money. And that's why banks do what they do, and the law provides that protection for them, because that protection is ultimately for you and for me.
We now present Did You Know?
Minimum savings rate. Did you know that the minimum savings rate is the regulated rate on savings deposits? It was introduced in January 1984. The aim of the policy was to assist financial intermediation and to encourage and reward savings by small depositors. Since its inception, the minimum savings rate has been adjusted twice, first in September 2002 and February 2015.
We've come to the end of this episode of ECCB Connects. Thank you for watching, and be sure to connect with us next week when we'll bring you another program.